Hey, Bus Bench babes, are you that agent that you're hosting open house after open house after open house? And you're like, why isn't anybody buying the house? Why isn't anybody want to work with me? Why am I not getting any business out of open houses? All my other realtor friends are getting business left, right, and center out of open houses. And why does this feel like this is so hard? This is a podcast for you. I'm going to deep dive into some of my little secret little things that I do to really make open houses special, to make me stand out from the crowd and really make me the realtor of choice. Let's dive in.
You're listening to the Girl Get Your Face Off a Bus Bench podcast, where we invite you to check your ego at the app, grab a cup of coffee, and get ready to dive into all things real estate marketing, social media, friendship, hardship, love, money mindset, and all the things that celebrate you as a badass boss babe.
We're here to encourage you, show up for you, give you a loving kick in the pants when you need it most, and be your soft place to land on the hardest of days. So pull up a seat at our table and get ready to be inspired and start living your best life by design.
Welcome to the Girl Get Your Face Off a Bus Bench podcast. We are so excited you're here.
Okay, girls, let's dive in. Hey, Bus Bench babes. Thanks for being here today. We're going to talk all about how to crush an open house and how to convert. I think this is one of the things that a lot of agents are like, I hate doing open houses. It feels like a waste of my time. Who am I doing this for? Am I just making the sellers happy? And that's kind of one of the reasons. I'm not going to lie. Sellers a lot of times want to see that an open house is happening. But if you're doing it the right way, let's be honest, like this is a really great way for you as a buying and selling agent, like anyone in real estate, to get more business. So that's what we're going to dive in today. So a question that's come up really, really regularly at listing appointments recently is, are open houses still a thing? And it's interesting. I think sometimes I take for granted that because I'm in it and this is what I do all day, every day, that I forget that the person on the other side of the kitchen table only does this. You know, the average person is not selling a house every couple of years. They're selling a house every a lot of years, maybe 10 years, maybe 20 years. I met with a seller yesterday and her husband passed away 6 years ago and she's been in her house since 1986. I was 16 years old when they bought their house. So she's been in her house a long time. So all the questions that she's asking, well, of course she's asking it. It's completely different. She was telling me a story. This is total sidebar, but it was so funny. She said when they were getting ready to sell their old house, move into their current house, they had teenage kids at home. Their youngest was like 16. And they had somebody show up for a showing and they were out of town and they had left the house perfectly and they told the kids, like, you got to leave the house perfect. And if there's going to be a showing, like, it wasn't like today where there's like 100 showings the first day. Not like that back in the day. You would maybe get like one showing here or there. They said, well, we'll just let you know. Well, the kids left to their own devices. They had a party. And when they cleaned up, they put a whole bunch of pizza boxes in the oven. And the buyers came through and were like looking in all the nooks and crannies and realized that it looked like there had just been a rager party, kegger there or something. And they're like, yeah, no, I think we're going to pass on this house. She's like, I was so pissed at those kids. She's like, they completely ruined that sale. And I'm like, well, I mean, I don't know if they really ruined that sale, but that was really funny that the kids are like, well, we'll just hide the evidence in the oven and no one's going to look in there. But the moral of the story is open houses are a thing. They have been a thing. They are a thing. They're still a thing. I think they're always going to be a thing. But let's really dive into what that looks like. Like, how do you crush an open house? How do you convert? How do you make it like the best use of your time? So it's not just 2 hours on your calendar where you're like, I'm dreading this. Because I've been there. I know, like, I've treated open houses like this over the years and it doesn't do me any good. Then it truly is a waste of my time if I'm not putting in the legwork elsewhere to make it be successful. So let's just dive in. One of the first things you have to do is think about an open house is not just your Saturday open house from 10 to noon. If you are starting to prep for your open house at 8:30 on a Saturday morning, you're doing it wrong. That is doing it wrong. You need to be prepping for your open house at the beginning of the week, as early as you can, as much runway as you possibly can get on it. When we're launching a new listing, I'm recording this podcast and I'm walking out the door to go to an open house and host an open house on one of our new listings. But we didn't even have the listing up yet. We were waiting on photos to come back. And I already had how many open houses scheduled? 5 open houses scheduled before we even hit the market. So I knew we were going to hit the market on Thursday. So Monday morning, Carrie and I are reaching out to, so I knew the open houses that I was able to do, and it's holiday weekend, it's Easter weekend. And that's a whole nother thing, is that I don't normally launch listings on holiday weekends. And we've talked about this. If you've been here for a while, you've listened to my podcast, and don't come at me and say, Beth, you said no holiday weekends. I did say no holiday weekends. I will go on record and say that I have said no holiday weekends. However, I think there are, like the little asterisk where it's like, read the fine print. Okay. So last Thanksgiving, we had launched a listing, Thanksgiving weekend, of a cute little starter house in a town where I knew it would be a super hot listing. And so I did it. I put it on Thanksgiving weekend just because there was no other competition. There was no other homes like that for sale in that price point. And I'm like, well, I mean, a lot of people travel for Thanksgiving, but also a lot of like parents and stuff come to the Twin Cities for Thanksgiving, and it worked out beautifully. There were a lot of buyers that came through, first-time home buyers that came through with family and friends that were in town for Thanksgiving weekend, and we got, I don't know, 8 offers or something like that. So I'm like, yeah, let me think about this for Easter weekend. We got pushed back a weekend because of landscaper delays. So what do? Like, you just have to get creative and roll with the punches. But again, this listing this week is also one of those price points where, like, I did my deep dive. Like, there was no other houses for sale in this price point in this area. And I would say in general, like, spring break is over and not quite as many people travel for Easter. So I'm like, we're going to roll the dice with this one and we're going to put it on Easter weekend. But last Monday, like, I'm recording this on Saturday morning. Last Monday, I was reaching out to agents that are like crush open houses and want to jump in and help our team with open houses. And so I reached out and said, hey, like, I need help on open houses, these days. And they're the 2 rock star agents that I love working with are like, yes, and yes, we will totally sign up. So we already had open houses lined up on Monday. The property wasn't even going on the market for several more days. And it's all marketed. So the minute we hit the market as coming soon, the property went on the market as coming soon, and all the open houses were listed. I wasn't trying to scramble and fill open house spots like 2 seconds before the closing. That had already been determined. So that's one of the biggest game changers, is that a lot of times buyers don't have the availability to go see the house the first day it hits the market. Maybe they're not sure if it's going to meet their needs and they don't want to inconvenience their agent. It's that typical Minnesota nice thing that I joke about, but it really comes into, I see it a lot where buyers are like, well, I don't want to call my agent on a weekend. Guess what? Agents work on the weekends. That's when we work, because that's when you're available to see houses. So a lot of buyers will just pop into open houses, and if they love it, then they'll call their agent. And if they don't love it, then they're like, well, then we didn't inconvenience our agent. So that is a great way to be able to have buyers plan their weekend, and they can see way in advance. They can get babysitters. They can rearrange their schedules. They can do whatever they want. But one of the agents said she wanted to do an open house on Easter Sunday. And you might think that sounds a little bit weird, but like, there have been Easters. I will never forget an Easter that I had some clients. I met them when I lived in Puerto Rico. And then through the grapevine, I heard that they were moving to Minnesota, and they're like, oh my God, we want to work with you. So they came to town to house hunt on an Easter weekend, and they stayed at our house with Mark and I. I said, bring some clothes for Easter. I'm like, we'll go to church on Easter morning and then we'll go to brunch at my mom's and then we'll see houses on Sunday afternoon. And then they flew out like Sunday night. But we had been seeing houses all weekend, but that was back in the day when there are actually a ton of houses to see, which is not the case today. But yeah, we toured tons of houses on Easter. And so many houses, when you look online, are actually vacant and it makes it super easy to tour them. So why not? Why not have an open house when people are like, well, we had Easter brunch and now the rest of the day is wide open. Let's go to an open house. So get the plan in place way, way ahead of time. Start promoting heavily. Do it on all your socials. In Facebook, you can schedule an event. There are so many ways to like broadcast and get the word out there. If you're really religious with your emails, I mean, we talk about that all the time here in the Bus Bench Babe. Christy just did a podcast about like the 5 emails to send this month. But if you're sending emails, you can put that in your email like, hey, and even if you already had your email written a couple of weeks ago, before it goes out this week, the week of your open house, pop it in there like, hey, in addition to blah, 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 whatever else you're talking about in your email, put a little snippet about the house. Hey, we're having an open house. Who do you know? Looking for a beautiful 4-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-story in this neighborhood, in this school district. And oh my gosh, you can walk to blah, 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 and we'll change your life, whatever. Walk to the Starbucks, homes closer to Starbucks and Trader Joe's are supposed to be worth more money. So like highlight the things that make it really important, but that should be in your email. That should be on Zillow. That should be on Redfin. That should be on all the sites. It should be on your real estate website. It should be on all your socials. And if you're running a team, every agent on your team can be promoting it too. So like the open house is not just the 10 to 12 on Saturday. The open house is like the whole week leading up to it. The other thing that I love to do is when I have agents that aren't on my team that are with us in our EXP group, I always send them a link to my photos and I say, market the heck out of it. We're all at the same brokerage. Go ahead. I want them to be armed with as much information so they can create compelling marketing campaign pieces that will attract buyers to not only my open houses, but their open houses that they're hosting on my listing. So I just feel like more is more. I don't like that scarcity mindset where you're like, well, you can host my open house, but any leads that come in are mine. I still remember some old school agents at Keller Williams that would say if an agent from the office was hosting an open house for them, they're like, well, if a lead comes in, let's split it. Hell no, I would never ask an agent that's hosting one of my open houses to split a lead with me. Are you kidding me? It's not easy to convert a lead at an open house. If you're really strategic about it, it happens all the time. But, if someone is doing the work and they're taking the time and they're planning and they're marketing, I'm not going to take that lead from them. Not even a thought in my head. And if that agent brings me a buyer, oh my gosh, all the better. Then I'm working with someone that is so easy to work with that I already know their work style. Yeah. That just is win-win for me. So I'm going to give the agents every opportunity to be able to market the property beautifully outside of how I'm marketing the property. So it's getting the most exposure. Exposure, pricing, location are sort of the 3 things that are the name of the game. You can't change the location, but you can change the price around the location. But exposure, yeah. The more exposure, the better. The more eyeballs that see the listing, the more people walk through the door with showings and open houses. The more people that walk through and see the home, the more likely are you to have an offer or even better, multiple offers. So yeah, that whole week leading up, key. So key. But what about signage? So the day of or even the night before the open house, are you promoting the property? Do you have a rider hanging on the sign that say open house Saturday 10 to 12? Do you have directionals? I'm not even going to lie and tell you there have been open houses where I've put up only a couple of signs simply because it was a blizzard or maybe it was pouring rain or I couldn't get my sign in the frozen ground or it was right off a busy road and I've been lazy and I will raise my hand and admit I have done that. But let me tell you, it's a humongous difference between putting out 5 signs and putting out 25 signs. I'm just going to say it. Let's call a spade a spade. The more signs you put out, the more eyeballs and attention you're going to get. And people are like, whoa, I must go to this open house. Look at, there's signs everywhere. They're coming in from every direction. And a lot of times on a Saturday, 10 to 12, I love that morning open house because people are either coming or going for kids with sports. They're doing their little Target run. Maybe they're buzzing out to get a cup of coffee. Maybe they're just out on a walk and they're like, oh my gosh, I got to pop over. I forgot that open house is happening today and I wanted to go see that house. So signs, as many signs as you can put out. There's an agent friend here in the Twin Cities and she's known to put out like hundreds of signs. So she might have 2 or 3 listings in one area and she'll have 100 signs out. And people are driving around the town going, holy crap, does she have every listing in this whole entire metro area? And then she'll go to listing appointments and people will be, and she'll ask sellers like, hey, how did you find me? How did you hear about me? And they're like, we see your open house signs all the time. So like she literally gets business purely because of the fact that she puts out 8 million open house signs. And let's be clear, she's not putting them out. She's not the one putting them out. She had younger kids at the time that were putting them out. And now that she's an empty nester, I think she hires it out. So there are people, you can hire people out to put out open houses. Give them a map of where you want all the open house signs, give them your signs, have them put your signs out. They can collect your signs at the end of the weekend or the end of the day. Leverage your time correctly on things that are valuable. But putting out signs is not that expensive. And it's such a beautiful way to show that you are absolutely an epic professional. I'm not one of those people that does like balloons or, big, huge flags or stuff like that in front of listings. My husband, Mark, is just a total goon. He loves to, like, anytime we drive past a car dealership and you see those wacky, wavy arm guys, the ones I'm talking about. He always would joke and he's like, you need to get one of those and put it in front of your open houses. I'm like, dude, I am not putting that in front of my open house. That is not my brand, but maybe it is your brand. Maybe it will pull the people in. I don't know. Car dealerships have been doing it for decades. So maybe there's something to it. But, make sure that what you're doing for your open house is really aligned with your brand. I would say that is also really important. So then when someone walks into the open house, a potential buyer or a potential seller, they're not like, holy shit, this is a weird disconnect. Stay on brand, folks. Stay on brand. And I know Christy would be saying the same thing if she was here. I love to use QR codes. During COVID, we used QR codes all the time. Like everything was like paperless. There was no like flyers or takeaways in the properties. But there's a whole generation of people that don't want the clutter and don't want the paper. My generation is a generation of paper. We like all the paper. And my in-laws, oh my God, my father-in-law, we always joke. We're like, well, load up on the paper and the printer and printer ink when he comes to town because it's one of the things he loves. Mark and I got him a travel printer for when they travel. They travel all over the world. And we totally got it for him as a joke. Like it was an inside joke for Mark and I. And he could not have been more thrilled with that gift. But not every generation is a generation that loves the clutter and the paper. So have QR codes and also have flyers. Have options for both demographics, clutter and no clutter generations. Think about the timing of your open house. I say that this is also really important. Our team has really loved doing what we call like a happy hour open house where you're catching people like on their way home from work or on their, maybe their evening walk. So I did an open house. I'm talking about the listing that I'm heading to today. We launched it on Thursday and I did an open house from 4:30 until 6 on Thursday. And it happened to be raining. And I'm like, like the worst. I'm like, please, sun, come out. Rain, please go away. And it finally stopped raining. It wasn't like torrential. We had one moment for a little heavy rain. But it was packed. We had like 15 groups through on a Thursday afternoon. So give the people what they want. They want accessibility to the property. Buyers want accessibility. And again, they don't want to inconvenience their agents, which is weird. We all know that's, that's your job as an agent to be showing your clients properties, but give them a lot of opportunities to stop into the house. The other thing that I also think is really awesome for open houses is maybe somebody is coming, maybe a buyer comes to the house the first day or second day it's on the market with their agent, but and they like the house, but maybe they're looking for the opportunity to fall in love with the house. Well, they want to come back and not have their agent come back with them a second time. Maybe they want to bring mom and dad through. Maybe they're older and want to bring their kids through. Like, you don't ever know. Maybe only one of the deciding people in the equation was available on Thursday for the showing, and then the significant other wants to see the property, or they want to show kids. You just don't ever know. But a lot of times people want to get a second set of eyeballs on the property, especially if it's in multiple offers, especially if it's, big price points, or, people just want to see it again to just really reconfirm that this is a good decision and they can move forward. So having open houses open at times that make sense. Here in the Midwest, a lot of people go to church on Sundays. So having an open house at like 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning is not always effective. I've tried to do them before to work around my schedule. And a lot of times that first hour, that 10 to 11 hour, I'm just sitting there like twiddling my thumbs, working on other things because the buyers are not coming. And then all of a sudden that last hour, everyone is showing up because now they're on their way home from church. So those are things to think about. Like, what is going on in the world? Are there sports events? If there is, like last weekend with the Masters, you better have the Masters on the TV at your open house if you think you're going to get anyone to come through on a big, huge sports weekend like a Masters weekend. What about a big football weekend in the fall? If it's a huge Vikings game or whatever the team is in the town where you're listening to this podcast, make sure that you are being really cognizant about the fact that there might be a football game on. And you might not get the traffic you want simply because, 70,000 people are at the game, and, the other half of the Twin Cities is sitting at home watching it or sitting at the sports bar watching it. And the fact that you're hosting an open house isn't even on their radar. So those are things to think about. Look at schedules, look at sports schedules. Is it spring break weekend in the town where you live? Well, if you have a family home with 4 bedrooms and 3 baths, and it's the week that everybody's on spring break, chances are launching that listing that week is probably not the best idea anyways, first of all. But then second of all, you should expect to have lower than traffic open houses. And those are things to communicate with the client. So then your client isn't disappointed going, oh my God, this sucks. We got our house ready and we vacated and we took the pets and the kids and we vacuumed our way out the door. That's so much work. I mean, if you've sold your house recently, you know how much work it is to keep it spotless. And especially if there's pets and kids involved, or just even more than one person involved, if you know, it's hard work. And so you want to make sure that it's worthwhile for the seller also. The whole goal is for you to be selling their house or finding buyers to buy their house. And, they don't care if you're picking up leads that you're going to sell a different house to. They want you selling their house. So just make sure you're really doing all the research about times, days, weekends, holidays, spring breaks, Easters, the Christmases, all those things, and schedule around it if possible. The other thing is I love to set the expectation with my client. You're like, okay, I need you to have the house like spotless. Can you run the mower, like mow the yard? The fresh stripes in the grass for the open house weekend would be awesome. That would be great. Have everything looking beautiful. Do you have a yummy smelling diffuser? No, not like the crappy Glade plugins, but like, do you have something going like a yummy candle or something where you walk in and you're like, oh my God, this smells like the W Hotel? Like, can you prep your sellers to have the house spotless? If they have some really complicated music system, can you get them to turn on some soft jazz? Can you have them, like on a really beautiful day, have the windows open? If it's hot out, crank the AC down. If it's freezing out, turn the heat up. When you get there, turn the gas fireplaces on. Like, set the stage so when someone walks in, they're like, oh my gosh, this is the homiest, coziest, most welcoming home I've been to, and this is what we've been looking for the last 6 months. But you got to set that stage, and that doesn't just start with you once you get to the open house. That's you talking to the sellers ahead of time, because that can save you time once you get to the open house. I always say, turn on all the lights, every single light, light the place up like a Christmas tree. Have everything tidy, make sure all the beds are made, all the laundry's in the laundry baskets, pick up all the toys. If you've got a work from home space, make sure your desk is tidy, tuck away prescription meds that could be a temptation. If you have like really nice jewelry, like tuck away things that would be a temptation. Knock on wood, I've never had anyone steal anything at an open house, but there have been stories over the years. I've been doing this long enough where there was a realtor here in the Twin Cities that would schedule just like a preview showing, and he was on the hunt for narcotics and eventually got busted for his drug habit and got put in treatment and I think jail ultimately. But like, there are bad people out there with bad intentions. So don't leave something that's a temptation out just like, oh, hey, here's my, $5,000 designer handbag just sitting out and wide open. I had a client over years ago, well, not even that years, a handful of years ago, and she had the most beautiful vintage Louis Vuitton collection, like the trunks and like the cute like makeup cases. Okay, those are hard to find and they're expensive as hell. Like since COVID, that kind of stuff has skyrocketed in value. And I said, okay, I love your trunks. I love that they're sitting out and they're on display. I mean, they make me so happy. Like you're from one designer handbag gal to another. I love this, but I don't want this to be a temptation for anyone. So all of this stuff, can you pack it away? And she's like, yes, happy to. She's like, I would be heartbroken if any of this stuff disappeared. And I'm like, we vet people as hard as we can. We are, try to have eyes on the back of your head at the open house, but you just never know. And I didn't even want all those vintage beautiful handbags in all the photos online because I didn't want somebody to be able to see the property online and go, oh yeah, look at all this awesome vintage Louis Vuitton. How about we take two people to the open house and one person distracts me, the agent, and then the other person is walking the Louis Vuitton out the back door. I would say that is not the norm here in Minnesota. I haven't heard about it happening in years and years, but let's not leave that temptation out. Even sometimes I'll get to the open house, and if a client has jewelry where I'm like, I think that this is costume jewelry, but let's not leave this to chance. And I'm like, I will tuck it away in a special spot. I'll snap a picture of it and I'll send it to my client and say, hey, just FYI, I tucked your jewelry away here in this dresser drawer. When you get home and don't panic that it's gone. Here's where it is. I just wanted, to get it out of the line of sight. And your client is always going to appreciate that you're looking out for them, right? Like it's our job to keep their property as safe as we possibly can, but let's also be smart about that. So like educating your clients is huge in that regard. The day of open house, I love to get there early. And I always tell my clients this ahead of time, like I will be there early, half hour early is my ideal, but like really like 20 minutes early is really kind of my sweet spot. Like by the time I get signs out. So usually what I will do is I will go to the property first. I've already told my sellers to like, you guys be sparse, get out, Let me have the house for a few hours. So then I'm really asking them to have the house for maybe like 3 hours. Like, I'm like, give me like a 30-minute cushion at the back end too, in case there's any stragglers or people that walk up to the open house at the very end. But at the beginning, before I put my signs like right in front of the house, I will go to the house first, get all the lights turned on, walk around and record a bunch of videos if I haven't done that already and already don't have videos. But then I'll be like, hey, it's Beth. I'm at 123 Banana Street today. I'm going to be here from 10 to 12. Here's what's awesome about this house. This location can't be beat. There's a gorgeous park at the end of the street. The hottest elementary school is walking distance, and you can walk and grab coffee on a Saturday morning, and there's a dog park, and there's blah, 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 blah. And, have your boat at the boat slip down the street at Lake Minnetonka, like whatever it is that's compelling, whatever it is that is not on Zillow or Redfin or Realtor.com for somebody to read about. What can I talk about that is something that they didn't know. Be like, holy crap, I didn't know it was that close to that elementary school. I didn't know you could walk to Starbucks or walk to downtown Excelsior from there. Like, you need to point out the things that maybe just aren't as obvious unless someone were to do a little bit more digging. But then after I film my videos, then I go back out and put the sign out in the front yard that's like, hey, we're open for business, come on in. Because if you put those signs like right in front of the house and like someone doesn't know specifically what the time is, then while you're in the middle of prepping the home and getting all the lights turned on, then someone might be walking in the house and then you're not totally like mentally ready for that. And it makes it just a little bit awkward. And when I get to the house, and just from a safety standpoint, something that I always say, like, I take the key out of the lockbox, open the door, but then I put the key back in the lockbox and scramble the code or lock it back up so I don't lose it in that 2-hour open house time where I'm like, oh, I slipped it in my pocket. Swear to God, I put it in my pocket. Where the hell did that key go? And then you're scrambling at the end of the open house going, oh shit, now what? So I like to just put the key back in the lockbox, but also then when I get to the house, I go in the house and I lock myself in the house. Let's say you're in a big house and you're in the basement trying to get lights turned on and, all of a sudden you're like making a teenager's bed because they forgot to make the bed and somebody didn't check on the teenager. I don't want somebody to come in the house and either surprise me or corner me in the house. You just never know. Like, safety first. You need to really be smart about that. So I go in, lock myself in the house while I'm getting the home ready, even while I'm filming the videos. And then when the start time of the open house. And if somebody were to come a little bit early, there's no reason why they can't ring the doorbell. They can ring the doorbell and then you go answer the door and say, oh, hey, so nice to see you. I was just getting all the lights turned on. And then they're usually like, oh my gosh, am I early? And be like, yeah. And look at this. You get a private tour. Come on in. Just make them feel really welcome and don't make them be like, yeah, you're 10 minutes early. You never know if that's going to be the buyer, but like, greet them, be friendly, but think about that from a safety standpoint is just make sure that when you're in the house alone, that you're being safe. And then at the end of the open house, I always make sure that the house is emptied out, and then I will lock the door and then go around and shut off all the lights, shut the windows, lock the doors, all of that. But like, make sure you're leaving the house in a really perfect condition, as perfect of a condition as you can. So when your sellers get home, they really appreciate the fact that you care about their home and the safety of their home as much as they do. So I don't like slider doors get left unlocked all the time. The garage doors, or like someone will just like be downstairs and had walked out the patio door and then they walked around the side of the house and they forgot to even shut it. So make sure you're completely walking through the house and securing the property after the open house. I would say that's just as important as getting the house open at the beginning of the open house. The other thing that I love to do, and this is slightly out of order, when I'm driving to the open house, like, I'm putting out good vibes. Like, I want to make sure that I'm showing up as my best self. Like, I look put together. I don't look like a hot mess. I don't wear yoga pants to, there'll be days where I'm wearing yoga pants when I'm out staging properties, but you're not going to catch me in yoga pants at an open house. I'm going to show up as a professional. I'm going to show up as a boss that is ready to get there and sell the house and truly be a professional. But I'm also at the same time, like, having like a positive mindset. I'm trying not to have like a super stressful morning. I'm trying to like be really calm and zen and like, okay, like, I want my vibe to attract my tribe. Like, when I have someone come into the open house, I want them to be like, holy cow, this chick is amazing. And something to think about. You might not even know, but many times buyer potentials that are walking into the open house, they're there and they are interviewing you. Yeah, the interview you didn't even know that you signed up for, you're being interviewed. You're being interviewed for them to be like, well, is this a buyer's agent? Holy cow, this agent kicks ass. I mean, there have been plenty of buyers that have walked into open houses and met an agent that was an absolute rock star, and they left and fired their current agent who was a deadbeat. It happens every single day. every day. So I'm not encouraging a client to do that. However, if I'm providing value and the agent they're currently working with is not providing value, who should they be working with? They should be working with me. That's why I've put in the effort all week long to have a successful Rockstar open house, because I've done the work. I've done the preparation. I mentally prepared. I got the house physically prepared. I marketed the heck out of it. And then I showed up with my A game. I'm the person who those buyers should hire. And the percentage of and I don't have this stat off the tip of my tongue. And you guys know I love my stats. There are so many buyers that are also have a home to sell. So there are clients that are interviewing you when they walk into the open house. This happened a couple of years ago. We had a super hot open house in a super hot part of town where we knew it would be busy, but we were not prepared for the level of activity. It was like, holy shit, like 50 groups through open houses, 15 offer type property, but a couple walked through the open house and they were not necessarily there to buy the house. What they were there for is they were looking for a Rockstar agent to sell their house like a few blocks away. And they ended up being a buy sell, and we love them. They're the cutest couple, second marriage for both, blended family, and we just have really gotten to know them and just adore them. But they came from an open house. They walked into the open house and they were interviewing the BPR experience. They wanted to make sure we knew what the hell we were talking about. And they're like, if there's this many cars here for the open house, this is what we want for our house also. So you just don't know. You might be at that job interview you didn't even know you're interviewing for. So how are you showing up as an agent? Are you showing up with a positive attitude? Are you showing up like coming from contribution? Are you willing to help even if those buyers walk in the door and all of a sudden, like in the back of your mind, you're like, there's no way they can afford this house. Don't do that. Don't do that, because they're going to sense those buyers walking in that house. You have no idea. Don't judge a book by its cover. It's like kind of that classic old school guy that walks into the car dealership and he looks like a scrub because he's just been out mowing his lawn all Saturday morning. And then he's like, I want to go into the pickup truck and buy a brand new Suburban. And then the guy shows up and he pays cash for the Suburban. And the other bougie car salesman guys that didn't give the guy the time of the day are like, shit. It's like that whole Pretty Woman thing. Big mistake when she walks out of the store with the like 20 shopping bags and walks past the store of the bitches that wouldn't sell her the clothes that she wanted. Don't do that to anyone that walks in the door of your open houses, because it could really backfire on you. And you don't know. You don't know if you're being interviewed. I love to use sign-in forms and like the old school sign-in sheets. That's what everybody used back in the day. I've been selling real estate, like, you know, as Glenda Baker would say, since Jesus was a baby. A lot of people on those open house sign-up forms like will scribble so you can't even read it, or they're like, aha, you know, this is like Batman 123 at Hotmail. You know, like they're just giving you bogus information to get you to go away. But if you actually have an iPad or a laptop or something for them to sign in, more often than not, you're actually going to get good information. And then there's usually a question on there that says, are you working with a real estate agent? So if you get the real estate agent's contact info, or you know who they are, I always have a notepad too at the open house so I can jot down notes. And they're like, oh yeah, they said I'm working with so-and-so. Well, great. Maybe so-and-so doesn't even know that their buyers are out at the open house. Then I can reach out to so-and-so and say, hey, so-and-so, you know, Bob and Sue stopped in at my open house today. They're awesome. Here's a couple of questions that they had. I told them that I would get back to you with the answers. Let me know if anything else comes up. It really seemed like they like it. Well, I work with tons of buyers that are sort of like, let's call them like lukewarm buyers that are sitting on the fence, or maybe they're like, yeah, Beth, we're not going to do anything right now. And then all of a sudden they're at an open house and I'm like, I've had agents call me and they're like, hey, Beth, your buyer so-and-so at such and such town, she stopped by my open house and, you know, she had some questions, but she seemed like she really liked it. So it's interesting that I have agents doing that for my buyers. And so I love to be able to do the same thing. And what does that do? It builds rapport. Maybe you as the buyer's agent didn't even know that your buyer was in town and out looking at houses. Maybe you sent them the house and they didn't say anything about it. They didn't even respond, but then they're going to the open house and they really truly fell in love with it. And all of a sudden you can get a sale out of the deal. Why not make this easier for everyone involved? It's a win-win. Our sellers and buyers, get paired with a home that they love. The sellers get to sell and move on to their next chapter in life. We as agents get paid. Like this is all a win-win. So why are we not doing a better job about this? It's just not that hard to really, really be successful and stand out, create value. Another thing to think about when a buyer is walking into an open house, in addition to like being friendly, being welcoming, having the house ready, how else can I provide value? Buyers are so savvy nowadays, and I hate the word savvy. We're just going to go on record with that. I think that word is like cheesy, but it's the perfect word for this scenario. Buyers are savvy nowadays. And reason being is they have access to so much information. They're looking on all the sites. You think they're only looking at your little MLS search? That's not what they're doing. They're on 100 sites. They're sleuthing. They're looking at tax records. They're looking at who the owner is. And then they're sleuthing on the owners. Buyers are ridiculously savvy with their sleuthing skills. So when they come into an open house, how can I provide value with information that is going to be information other than what they've seen online, without compromising my ethical responsibility, and not disclosing confidential things that the sellers don't want me to disclose? If there's something about the property, like get the seller's permission. As long as the seller gives you permission, you can disclose whatever you want, but you just can't do it without their permission. So disclose, talk about the things. Maybe there is a special little, I had a listing and the neighbor next door, everyone joked, it was sort of like the unofficial joke, is that the neighbor next door was the mayor of the neighborhood. And this woman is amazing. She hosts neighborhood barbecues. All the little kids in the neighborhood love to stop there. She's got a garden that everyone loves. And she is like the unofficial mayor of that neighborhood. Nobody's going to find that out on Zillow. Nobody's going to know that you have like the coolest neighbor right next door. So like, what are those nuancy things that you can talk about that maybe nobody even thinks about? I don't know. Just like something silly. If I had a listing right down the street from Adele's custard shop in Excelsior, you can bet your ass that I would probably have some gift cards to give away to Adele's. I would be telling everybody that stopped into the open house, hey, I don't know what you're doing on the way out of this open house. If you're not familiar with the Excelsior area, pop over to Adele's. It's a cute little old converted house, and they turned it into a custard shop. And on their website, they have their flavor of the day. Holy shit, I didn't need to know about that. It will change your life. It is like some of the best ice cream in the Southwest Metro, in my opinion. So like, what are those things like that in the area where your listing is that you can really show that you know what the hell you're talking about? Even if you're not from the area, even if you don't live in the area, you can do the research ahead of time. You can ask, if this isn't your listing and you are an agent that just works open houses for listing agents all the time, ask the listing agent, what's special about this house that's not something that is going to be found on Zillow or realtor.com? And find that out. So when a buyer walks in, you have like the edge. You're able to talk about something that maybe they didn't know about. Maybe there's this secret little fishing spot down the street that isn't a public access, but everyone in the neighborhood knows it's the special little thing. Maybe there's like a little cut through the woods to get to the bike trail so you don't have to go all the way around. Like all those little special things are the things that buyers want to know about. Every buyer wants to feel like a VIP. Every client wants to feel like a VIP. So how can you make them feel like the ultimate VIP, like they were just let into like the VIP lounge at the club and they're like, haha, everyone else was general admission and look at, I'm sitting in the VIP section. Like, how can you do that without violating the confidentiality part of the equation with the clients? There's so many ways to do it. You just got to think outside the box. And when I love to pull comps for properties, especially if it's an interesting property, or maybe it's in a neighborhood where there's a bunch of houses for sale, but maybe you're the best priced house in the neighborhood, print out comps, have a whole bunch of them ready to go, or just have one like master copy. And so then if somebody's questioning the price, the this, the that, or like, sometimes I'll say like, hey, any feedback I can share with the seller. And, sometimes I'll be like, well, I think it's overpriced, and be like, oh, well, actually, did you see this comparable sheet that I had out here on the dining room table? Actually, this is the lowest price per square foot in the neighborhood, and the condition is very comparable, blah, blah, blah. Like all those things that you can talk about, because what is perceived in the buyer's head might actually not be what's happening. Right. So without being like a total know-it-all, be like, oh, hey, do you want to take a look at this? Here's like all the activity in the neighborhood. Here's how quickly homes are selling, blah, blah, blah. Here's the prices that they're selling for. Here's how we stack up next to that. But keep in mind, if you have a listing and it's overpriced, or it's like on the edge of overpriced, putting the comps out is probably not going to work in your favor. It really works in your favor if you have one of the more competitively priced houses in the neighborhood. But also, I love to print out a list of all the open houses that are happening in the area of where my open house is. And you can do it for the whole weekend or just for that same day. And they're not your listings, but at the top of it, I have all of my branding on there. It has my picture, it has my contact info, has my email and phone number. So someone's like, I'll just print out like 20 of them and have them at the open house and be like, hey, are you out looking at a bunch of open houses, or you just come to see me today? And I always kind of like make a joke about it. And they're like, no, we're out looking at a bunch of open houses. Awesome. Well, here's a list of all the other open houses in the area that are happening today. If you want to take a copy of that. And people are like, oh my gosh, this is so handy. Well, no one at any of the other open houses they've gone to all day long are doing stuff like that. So what can you do that's just that little thing that sets you apart, that really leaves, plants a seed that you're the agent of choice, that you would be a great agent to work with, that you would be a great agent to sell their house? It's all about thinking outside the box, making people feel special, making people feel like they have the VIP experience, showing up as the boss that you are. If you're listening to this podcast, it's not because you're taking a passive seat in your business. Like, you're probably listening to this podcast because you want to learn more and just do a better job and convert at open houses at a high level. So I just take away one tidbit. And if you get one awesome takeaway from this, shoot me a DM. I'd love to hear something that you're like, oh my God, that's so easy. I never even thought about doing that. I love to hear that kind of stuff. And it's just kind of the thing that like keeps me going. So until next time, bus bench babes, keep your face off a bus bench and keep being the badass boss babes that you are.
Okay, girls, are you feeling as inspired as we are? We're over here cheering you on because you just finished another episode of the Girl, Get Your Face Off a Bus Bench podcast.
If you want more, head over to girlgetyourfaceoffabusbench.com for show notes and more episodes. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. They mean the world to us, and they're what keep us going.
Girl, thanks for being here.